We have two incredible individuals here today, and I would like to introduce you to the wonderful Kirsty Nancarrow, who was born with a pen in her hand. She began writing at a very early age and always wanted to be a journalist, as she was fascinated by people's stories. During her 15-year career with the ABC, the award-winning journalist covered stories including the outback abduction of Peter Falconio and Joanne Lees, the landing of the Olympic torch at Uluru, and the federal intervention in Northern Territory's Aboriginal communities, as well as countless tragedies and natural disasters. It was one natural disaster in particular, the Nepal earthquake in 2015, which led Kirsty to transition from journalist to author and write her first book. Himalayan Dreams, the story of Som Tamang, is the biography of a Cairns resident who overcame being a slave child in Nepal to save a generation of children in his village from human trafficking and premature marriage. We would like to now turn the time over to Kirsty and to Som to be able to share their incredible story.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Beck.
Hello, my name is Som Tamang. In 2015 earthquake in Nepal, my life turned upside down. That's only part of my story. I would say I'm a simple person, but with a big vision to really mainly focus on other humans, other people, other beings, and just making sure everyone is okay.
Som is a self-made man who's called Cairns home for more than 20 years. He grew up surrounded by poverty in rural Nepal, and he knew education was a ticket to a better life.
When I went to Kathmandu at age 10, I got taken by some village men, and they promised me the school, but I never seen the school for a long time. So I was just there to help them cook, help them clean their house, wash their clothes.
Som eventually escaped and set about funding the education of his younger siblings and then other village children. Coming to Far North Queensland has allowed Som to change many lives through his charity Friends of Himalayan Children in Cairns, despite a devastating earthquake and now a global pandemic.
Anything is possible with courage and hard work and community support behind it. Kirsty and I have built a strong relationship after the earthquake in 2015, and I look forward to sharing my story with everyone.
I thought that was a good way of introducing Som and his life to you, and this no doubt will be a film someday, so I prepared this little pitch video for a program that was going a couple of years ago. Unfortunately, we didn't get our project up, but it's only a matter of time. So thank you very much for choosing to spend this morning with us. We really appreciate it. It's lovely to see some new faces that I had only just met, some that I haven't met at all, and lots of beautiful, warm, familiar faces as well. So thank you so much. It means a lot to both of us that you're here. So this session is going to delve a little bit into Som's story, but also how the book came to be and how our paths crossed and the trauma that we have both experienced brought us together to create this amazing project. So I did meet Som a couple of days after the 2015 earthquake. I was working for ABC Far North here, and we'd actually seen the front page of the Cairns Post on the Monday. Brendan, sitting in the back bears, had gone and taken a photo of Som and been around to the house on the Sunday. I immediately tried to get in touch with Som and said, can we arrange an interview about what has happened? And I didn't know a lot about Som or the Friends of Himalayan Children at that point, but I went round to, he's in one of the worst places in his life, and he was very welcoming and said, come straight around, we'll do an interview. And at that point, they were gearing up for Som to go back to Batassi in Nepal. And it was the first of many return visits to try and help. And I was very struck by how calm he was in all of this chaos that was going on, and became more intrigued as the months went past, following his story, going back and forth to Nepal. So this is when he returned to the village, and I might get you to explain what we're seeing in the photo, Som.
So there was a two event I remember when I first arrived. One was young girl that they thought is never going to survive, and one was my mom just like being really emotional and expressing her loss. And yeah, I remember those two moments when I first arrived, and that was like straight after I just stopped the car in front of there, and I had a journalist and camera crew from ABC. That's the moment, and that is the house that I built to host quite a lot of children. Since charity hostel has built separately distance away from this space, this house we rebuilt again, and now is using for volunteer and visitors to stay the house.
So imagine going home and seeing this scene in front of you, a personal loss of his brother and his family, and everything Som had worked for up until that point in ruins. The school in ruins, the children's hostel in ruins, and huge amounts of money and effort generated from this community in Cairns returned to dust. But it didn't put you off, because you have learnt resilience through your entire life. So I want to take you back to your childhood. And Batasi village still very much looks like this. It's a remote village northeast of Kathmandu. 2 days walk for somebody of my fitness. Som could probably run there, I think, in 6 or 8 hours.
It's only 14 kilometers walking distance.
Up and down the mountains in the shadow of the Himalayas. I want you to sort of just take us back to how things were for you when you were growing up in this village.
It's like another world. I remember things like if it's yesterday, and it's a very, very different life. And the place in Batasi, we don't have a sign of money. If you want money, you go out of the village to make money. And also, most of you probably know, in Nepal there is no social welfare system. We don't have Centrelink, we don't have aged care pension, we don't have any sign of support from government, especially for the money. And also this place does not have any hospital or any proper medical care. And the only way we live is farming, picking the homegrown fruit and veggies and grains and natural fruit in the forest. So, and if you want a meat, you go and try to hunt down some jungle animal or kill your own chicken and goats. So that's how I grew up, but only until about very young age when we look at life here. And that one I would have been about 6 years of age, and that was the first school uniform, new clothes that my mom could afford to buy for me to go to school. And back then I remember my dad saying, no need school, there is plenty of farm to work, and mom saying other kids are going and I want to go, so she wanted to support me. I remember that big argument between the mom and dad as well.
And Som was also helping fund his own education at that age. by going back and forth down to Melamchi to sell these berries that he'd got in the forest just to help support his own family. Can you imagine as a child walking 7 k's or something down a mountain to sell your wares to bring back enough money to just to be able to go to school, to put a uniform on your back? It's pretty extraordinary. And that privilege of education didn't extend to girls in the village. It was just the boys who got to go, mostly. The school only went to grade 5 at that point. So you were really wanting to continue with your education, and you had an opportunity to go to Kathmandu. Can you just tell us what happened there?
Yeah, the education is something you have to have a little privilege being from Pachase. And we'll talk about grade 5. I was born in 1983. The first school ever came sign up book and pen and pencil in the village was 1985. So only 3 years later. So basically, when I was going to school, the school did not have until grade 5. It was going from prep to 1, 2, 3. So that by the time I was 6, go to school, it was not many kids at school. In my memory, we had like 12 students when in the beginning, but when I left, it was about 24. So that was the schooling situation. And talking about the fruit and berries, I was born a little different in the village somehow, and I was always good with the people and talking, and I knew the adults take some grains to the higher up mountains to exchange with potatoes. So as I grew up, I realized I could take some fruit berries from the forest in the season down to town and give it to friendly grocer, and they give me lollies. And the journey of that exchange started quite early age, about 9 years of age or 8 years of age. Then I started taking more fruit down and exchanging with the food, such as bananas. So I would change with bananas. And as I grew up, I started bringing the bananas from downtown and sell it to actually my villagers who have the money. So going door knocking, selling. So the business skill and exchanging and communicating started quite really early age.
So because the school was only going to a certain level, you really wanted to continue education, but you had to leave the village to do that. A decision to follow a man you knew from the village to Kathmandu had some pretty severe consequences. Can you tell us about what happened to you when you were 10 years old and this man took you to Kathmandu?
I remember talking about other people going to Kathmandu and coming back with some money, and I was just selling those fruits and exchanging with lollies, but I imagined what it would be like to be other people, but other people are the adults who tell me such a glorious story, colorful, and a lot of money, a lot of fun, and weaving carpet or working in the restaurant, or being adopted in the family. There was a lot of options, and I just thought any of those options would do for me, And men from the village who continually go and do labor work in Kathmandu and have a lot of connection, one day offered me, if you want to go, you follow me, but don't tell your family because they might not let you go. And I thought, yeah, you're right. And then one evening I packed everything I need. Everything doesn't mean what I would pack now. Everything was just a bag to put the school uniform I had new in case I get to go to school in Kathmandu, and just took off. And that was my village life I remember arriving in Kathmandu in quite dark and catching this local bus. It's crowded, squeezing through the seats, and traveling probably about 2 hours nighttime bus journey, and arriving, getting out of the bus and going to someone's house. And that's all I remember. I do not remember the name of the place. I do not remember which direction I came and ended up in that house. And that was my life for quite a couple of years. And the man just going back, and I never seen him for a long time. He used to come back every now and then, but I never got to go back with him to the village. And I was hoping to be at school then. I never got to go to school. I just got the opportunity to help the children of those doctors, the family of doctors, and clean their kitchen, clean their laundry, and walk to the school with their little 6-7-year-old children to the school and walk back. That's how my life was spent for the first 2 years.
So you did eventually escape that situation and make your way back to Batasi. I think you said you were out buying vegetables. They began to trust you a little bit more, and he was buying vegetables and instead used the money to get on a bus to go back to Melanchi, and then thought he could make his way home from there. So what was in your mind when you went back there? Because you almost had to give up on your own education by that point, but you were determined to make a change based on what you had seen in Kathmandu happen, particularly to girls and young women. So tell us what was going through your mind in terms of abandoning your own education but wanting to put your siblings through school, and then ultimately the rest of the village.
It was a tough decision. After being trapped for a couple of years in Kathmandu, I found my way back to village for some time. And actually I did try to go to school again, but it was still impossible. So I had to return back to Kathmandu to work and earn a little bit of money. By then I was 13 or 14. I was strong enough to work in the laboring job in the construction side. And by then I promised myself that I will just be fine, and I want to make sure my brothers and sister get to school. And I started educating my brother who was below me, and sister Kumai was still young then. After that it was a big challenge. My brother started going to school, and the brother I have educated through finishing university, and he was one of my big hand to help out with the charity work at school. I lost during the earthquake, so that was a huge investment in the human life and my family, and charity work which I lost. And then also I wanted my sister to go to school. My parents never agreed to it. So I had to give a deal to my parents that if they want my continued support in the home and want to see me often coming back from Kathmandu, bringing money for them to buy whatever necessary in the household, they had to send Fulmaya to school. And she started going to school, and now she's a university graduate, and she's done other training courses, diplomas. In fact, Brandon is my brother-in-law here. My sister's just been married to Brandon, and she's coming back again to Australia to actually, probably you will meet again. We're gonna host a little fundraiser dinner while she's here. That was a huge battle, and after her there was my uncle who's been murdered by auntie with some postnatal depression or some mental health issue, and she left 4 girls behind, and my parents was responsible to take care of them, but my parents did not want to send them to school. So there was another battle to fight, and all of those girls has finished school, and all of the girls have finished college, and some of them are finished university as well. So that's what I wanted to do, and there was, once I started helping my cousin and sister, there was more girls wanting to help, being helped. That's how the charity talk and charity work has begun in a bigger scale.
An incredible journey.
Thank you.
So these are the 4 girls. They're all young women now, and Sujan, their brother, is actually the president of the Batassi School now. So investing in those lives has made a huge difference. And I just want to take us back to the photo of Fulmaya. So this is Fulmaya as she would have grown up without Som's support. And this is Fulmaya being the strong, brave, amazing woman, trekking guide, pharmacist, social worker that she is today. So you can just see before your eyes. And this is what compelled me to write the story. I'm just going to diverge into a little bit of my own story now. I didn't know all this about Som when I first met him, but through the course of the earthquake and getting to know him better, I learnt about the work he was doing, and I was very inspired by it. I've always been a champion of women's rights and social equality in my life, and this really spoke to me. And having covered lots of natural disasters, I knew that there's usually a huge outpouring of support right after earthquakes or other natural disasters, but then, you know, as the years pass or the months pass, that tends to wane, but the need is still there. So I thought, I sort of hatched this idea in my mind that I would go and help at some point after the earthquake, not immediately. And it was 2016, and Som had invited me to MC the first ever International Women's Day fundraiser for Friends of Himalayan Children, and that was the night I started, my husband and I started sponsoring young Janisha. She was 6 there, and she's now, I think, 12. And I thought maybe I will get over there, but I didn't know when. And it was kind of at that time that I started feeling a bit of a change in myself. I've been reporting for many, many years in Alice Springs, in Darwin, in Sydney, and in Cairns, and I'd covered a lot of crap. Like, I've been exposed to a lot, sitting in courtrooms with grieving families and horrific things that humans do to each other, car accidents, plane crashes, natural disasters, and all of these were ticking away at me. And it wasn't until 2 significant events, the 8 child murders that happened in Murray Street, and about 6 months after that, being the first camera woman on scene at the Ravenshoe Cafe explosion, that really tipped me over the edge. I started wanting to withdraw. I'm a very social person, and I started to withdraw. I didn't recognise myself, and things became more and more difficult. Unfortunately, at that time, I had jumped out of the newsroom and was the chief of staff at the ABC, and it got to the point where I think one day I was just sitting in front of my computer, not even knowing how to turn it on. That's how wiped out I was mentally, and I'd started taking antidepressants, and I had all the side effects, and I just thought, I just have to stop. This is over, my career's over, and my life is over. I didn't want to go on. So I just stepped away, took some leave, and I thought I just need to focus on getting better if I'm actually going to have a go at getting better. And I had wonderful support from everybody, my beautiful husband Sean and others in the community here, that just kind of kept me going. And then I talked to Som, and we'd already discussed maybe me going to Nepal at some point. And I thought, well, this is a good opportunity, because I didn't have any self-confidence at that point, and I didn't know what the future held for me in terms of my career. And I thought, well, I can help. I can go and volunteer. Maybe I'll get some self-worth back. And that's exactly what happened. And I remember him telling me, sitting in a cafe opposite the ABC, saying, you know, when people go to Batassi, they don't have any mental health issues. They all go away. And I didn't really know what he meant until I got there, but I went over there by myself. Som wasn't there at the time, and there were no groups of volunteers going to the hostel at the time. So I was very much on my own, and it was confronting. Obviously going from a very privileged life in Australia to a village that there may or may not be electricity, and just rising with the sun, going to bed when it sets, eating with the kids, walking to school every day. And you know what, it did the trick. I felt so happy being there and finally having a bit of a purpose again. And I thought, I've got to write this man's story. He's created all of this. These kids are so excited about going to school every single day, and it's incredible the transformation that he's made in Batassi. So I came home and said, I'd like to write your story. It took many, many years after that for us to actually get to the point of being able me to write it. So I did go back to the ABC for a while, and then I worked for Queensland Health, and then ultimately I got a RADAF grant from the Cairns Regional Council. And I thought, well, this is really the sign that it's time now to pull my finger out. I'd gone back in 2018 to do a fundraising trek for a library in Batassi, and that's us on the trek the day we got to Everest Base Camp. And these young women are all trekking guides in a very male-dominated industry in Nepal. And Som has another organisation called Take On Nepal, and it is about empowering women to become trekking guides. So we were a bit of a novelty on the trek because a lot of the guides are male, and they're sort of looking at these young women going, what are you doing here? And the women were very defensive about carrying the bags. They're like, you should see what we carry in the village on a daily basis. This is a treat, being able to carry these bags. And of course, it's quite a high wage that you can earn as a trekking guide in Nepal, and probably higher than most other professions, I would say. So not only has Som created an environment where women can be educated, and the school now goes to year 10, but there's also a path to employment afterwards. So these women who may have got married in their early teens, or worse, being trafficked to India, never to return, or return in shame when they have contracted AIDS and are no longer useful, have now got careers and prospects and can make decisions that don't just involve getting married and farming and that sort of thing. So it blows me away.
I just wanted to go a little bit in detail about the how we have the global issue about gender equality. It's a United Nations goal to create equal opportunities around the world. What I believe is that gender equality, it cannot be just done empowering women. So what I am creating is actually this has to also come from the men, from the boys, especially in such a young age. That's where we play really key role. For me, it's about educating young boys as well as grown-up men about the right for girls to be educated and also right of their choice. So that's where the Take On Nepal, the other organization, play a huge part. So when we take the young girls to trekking, is the male clients think it's such an awful thing for girls carrying their bag. And also a lot of tea houses in the villages on the trek think it's awful for village women to come with a Western man. So there are a lot of barriers to break there. There has been a stage where we had a sick client and a female guide has to stay behind with a male client, and the tea house owner said, we don't give accommodation for Nepalese girls with Western men clients. These kind of challenges where we are facing, and we managed to break this cycle in last 7 years, 10 years of trekking industry. And also, it's a fact the girls are more powerful than actually boys, but sometimes being born in Batase with lack of education, they just don't know that self power they have as a human, born as a woman. And also the same thing for the boys, thinking that the generations all you would all agree that the women should just give birth and stay home and the man goes out. So this is where we breaking the cycle through the charity work and Take on Nepal. But when the young boys start respecting the girls and treating them equally, there's no difference. And we do that in a very young age. For a great example, now we are off season, they have a school holidays, our boys and girls will go on the trek to explore a new destination, and they talk about in the tea houses, this is who we are, and that just flows. So that's the part of the women empowerment, how we do.
So Batase has come back from the earthquake. This is the school which has been rebuilt. Som has yet to reach the ultimate goal. It needs about another $100,000 to $200,000 in order to build the buildings and set the infrastructure and the teaching up to be able to take the school to year 12. At the moment, the children who want to continue their education after that are supported through Friends of Himalayan Children and the wonderful sponsors that are not only here in Cairns but elsewhere in the world to go to Kathmandu and finish their education. And when I went to volunteer in the school both times, there were no buildings like this. It was dirt floors, tin sheds, but the kids were just as committed to their education. Last year through Rotary Cairns Sunrise, we got 10 laptops for the kids, and now they actually have computers in the classroom, which they didn't.
And also one teacher.
Things continue to evolve, but it has been a bit challenging the last few years because the trekking industry hasn't been happening because of COVID, and you haven't been able to get home. So Som, at the end of next month, will be going home for the first time in 3 years. How are you feeling about that?
Pretty good. Just talking about back on the schooling, I wish there was another photo the whole time here, but if you do access Facebook, there is all the photos from the beginning to now. So what we're talking about extra building is, at the moment, what is happening. We have a Friends of Himalayan Children hostel. These are the kids only that we rescue, only in desperate need. If we don't rescue, they will end up in some terrible places that I endured myself as a child. Those type of kids come to the charity hostel. But there are a lot of other young students who are eager to go to school but too far to walk. So there is about 30 students staying here, cook themselves, eat themselves, sharing the school classrooms as their accommodation. So to be able to provide much better environment, that's when we talk about another accommodation building where they can go to, and we can extend the space they're using as accommodation to extra classrooms to have a grade 11 and 12. In Nepal, grade 10 was the high school, but now we are catching up with the Western style of education where 11 and 12 can be done at the same school. So that's the journey where we are heading to.
Now I know we're running out of time, and I'm sure that a few people might have some questions that they would like to ask. So I might throw it open to see if anyone would like to ask either Som or myself a question.
I'd love to hear more about the treks that you do. I know that you take people over from Australia and they go on treks as a fundraising activity. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
No, thank you. Before COVID, we had at least one big group of women come together, fundraise to go towards Friends of Himalayan Children to support the young girls to go on trainings, go to school, go to college. but since the COVID, it's been quite challenging. So that's where we're talking about challenging part of the charity work. And we have MF here, and she's our secretary in the charity organization, and her husband Tim is vice president. Without these two beautiful humans, I wouldn't be able to call a Friends of Himalayan Children charity today after the COVID, because I had to take a full-time job, and I work as a full-time youth worker right now. And next month, going to Nepal, I'm taking my holiday and going to something. So we are looking back on the charity trek again, where people come on this really amazing journey. And this trek is especially led by my partner Susan or myself, and we are hoping to get that back. What we find really challenging is that after COVID, we're finding really hard to people to participate in fundraising events or fundraising trek or fundraise. That's been the most challenging, but we are going to Nepal soon, next month, and we are gonna start pushing that out, and we'll definitely announce the charity track for 2024.
Speaking of charity, Sean and I sponsor another girl, Rabina, and she's the most amazing student. I remember when I first met her, I was teaching in the Year 4 class, which was chaotic. No one wanted to teach in there because there was like 30-something kids and they're all running riot. Anyway, this calm girl, she comes up to me at the whiteboard and presents her work, because I've told them to do something, and she's done it in 5 seconds and come up and, can you give me more work? Can you give me more work? And when I came home from that first time in Batasi, Sean was saying, okay, who else are we sponsoring now? And he knew that I would have somebody in mind, and it's been Rabina. So we've been sponsoring her for 6 years as well. And our Women in Media Far North Queensland group also sponsored Santali Tamang, who has made it now all the way through school and is now one of Som's trekking guides. So
yes, she's going to be one of the lead guide and committed and very loyal. You will meet when you come trekking with her.
So Rabina is about to finish year 10, which means she then has to go to Kathmandu or elsewhere to finish her schooling, which costs a lot more. So I've got a little GoFundMe campaign if anyone would be interested in donating. And this actually all goes to Friends of Himalayan Children. They administer the monies. Does anyone have any other questions?
I'd love to know how you ended up in Australia.
Long story short, Australia, once I was labouring, I got into tourist industry, and I started taking the tourists to Everest region and all other trekking region, carrying their backpack, self-motivated. And through that, I met so many people, and one of the story is one of them celebrity in the book, and also I met many wonderful people. And one of the people I met, I came to with Cairns to actually study English and be together. And that led me to study English, and then I went into adult tertiary access study at university, and that just kept on going, and that has extended my stay in Australia. That was back in 2002. I came here for 3 months initially and led for 3 years, and then now after 20 years it's been still going.
And incidentally, Som is the first person in his village to gain a university degree, which he did at JCU here in Cairns. So, very proud.
Som, firstly, thank you. Congratulations on everything you've achieved. It's amazing. I'd like to turn the focus a little bit on to Kirsty for a moment, because I think what you've done in terms of all the stories that you've created and told, that you're a real storyteller. And then to be hit with PTSD after the incredible stories you've had to deal with is really tough. What was it about, because finding purpose after doing stories like that is actually really important, and I think there's a message that you're sending to all of us about purpose. So can you unpack that a little bit in terms of how much this story has given you purpose post the career that you've had and the career that you're going into? I'm certainly not discounting that, but can you talk about purpose? Thank you.
Yeah, life-changing. That's the only two words I could use to describe it. It gave me my life back. Being able to, I mean, journalists have egos, right? We're used to instant gratification. I was able to go to work every day and do stories and see them go to air or listen to them on the radio, and I could tick that box and be very satisfied with myself. And obviously all that evaporated when I had my breakdown. So just going somewhere and being out of yourself and it not all being about you and your ego and just helping in a very real and raw way, it did make me feel purpose. And throughout my ABC career, I've always taken pride in mentoring other journalists. There's lots of journalists who are in the political bureaus now and foreign correspondents who have been my babies. And I've been so proud to mentor journalists along the way. So I always had this sense that education was going to be part of my journey. My father was a teacher, and yeah, actually teaching in the school in Batassi, I thought, oh, actually I can do this. I'm all right at this. I'm connecting with people who speak a completely different language, and they're still resonating with what I'm teaching. So yeah, it did actually change the course of my life, which I had thought was over. And I came back and it just made me reevaluate everything. I thought, I remember Sean having many conversations with me, and by the end he was getting me to repeat the mantra, I'm leaving the ABC, I'm leaving the ABC, I'm leaving the ABC, because it wasn't good for me. I just went back into the newsroom and it was re-traumatizing. And I wasn't actually diagnosed with PTSD until I left the ABC and had an assessment and finally got the treatment that I needed to get, and was very effective. I don't know if you've heard of EMDR treatment, but it was a long process. It was challenging, but it was worth it because I have another life. I'm living another life now. I have a business called Emotion Video Training and Production. We teach people how to make videos. I do media training. We do video production, and I am really satisfied. But this book is probably it's given me another life, and I can't thank Som enough for the opportunity that he has given me to have that other life.
Thank you, Kirsty. I just wanted to add a little bit on that. It's a really strange. Batassi village has this spirit of its own. I can't express in my story or in my words. Kirsty is one of that person, but I have had a lot of other young people that been to my village and changed their life. It gives me goosebumps. I have had parents send the kids who are committing suicide. They never told me until they gone to the village, and they changed life now. They become business owners in around Cairns, and some people become financial advisor in Canberra. And it's just that this young man still says every time I do my business presentation, I start with Batassi. Batassi is where I started my logos, my business name, inspiration grew there. I never forget that. So this kind of compliment kind of makes me question. And also, I ask myself a question sometimes, why I do this? And I get asked by other people as well, what is in for you? Why are you doing this? What's the gain? And I have never found the answer. Sometimes it just gets overwhelmed and it's too much. I just want to just forget about it, live normal life like everybody does in the village or everybody here. Just worry about my work, dinner, lunch, holiday. But it's been really, really tough, and it's been really difficult, but at the same time it's been difficult to stop, difficult to live. It's the spirit of the village, the people, the place. I just can't really explain, and I hope you get to experience this one day. It is remote, it is challenging, but it has the spirit. I don't know how, why, and the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Emma.
Thank you.
Thank you.